Hey, what's good, fam and friends? It's your brother Malachi Lice back at it like a snack addict. And today we got a special episode. Testimony time, testimony time. I'm gonna tell you about a little story time about pretty much how I overcame drug addiction, all the sex, drugs, rock and roll, the misery of this earth, the wickedness, anxiety, deep depression, um, homicidal thoughts, suicidal thoughts, and just so much. Being kicked down, betrayal, backstabbed, typical things of this earth, right? So I'll go ahead and start all the way from the jump, give you a background, paint the picture. So I grew up in a military town, Fort Riley Army base, but the town was called Junction City, Kansas. It's right next to the base. It's right next to Manhattan, Kansas, where Kansas State University's at. Small town, Kansas, the heartland. The center of the United States is like, I think, only a few miles west of the town or something like that, like the dead center. So truly the heartland. Had a good childhood growing up. I'm an 80s baby. So I'm an unk status at this point, but I feel young. I feel good. But to see the way the world has changed so much so quickly is wild. But I was blessed to really grow up in the 90s, essentially, right? Because we're the last of the outside all day kids having a blast, riding bikes, going to the pool in the summer. There's nothing like summer break, man. I mean, it's still true to this day, I'm sure. But just to like have the beginning of the internet, the beginning of phones. We had like flip phones. People had pagers. The internet was like 56K modem. Like really slow speeds. Like you would take it might take a minute for the page to load. I couldn't imagine kids trying to deal with that nowadays. They'd go nuts, right? But yeah, good times. I actually had like slight form of Asperger's, ADHD, ADD, and autism. Was on the spectrum slightly. You could even tell in pictures like something looked off, and I believe it was from vaccines, honestly. And they give you how many as a baby, 20 or something like that. But also in school, I remember they lined us up in middle school and gave us shots. I didn't even know what it was for. I'm not even sure if our parents knew. And later that day, I felt so sick and nauseous. And I remember I took a nap on the couch, and when I woke up, it's like I couldn't breathe out of my nostril. Like my right side of my nose was jacked up from then on. And I mean, come on, 1 + 1 = 2. It's from these vaccines. So, anyway, so I was like kind of a quiet kid, introvert naturally growing up. And, but I would call all the kids to the playground. I would hit everybody up to play football, baseball, basketball, kids from all over. My neighborhood was mixed. The house that I grew up in was like probably $70,000 ranch home. Decent neighborhood, but then it also had some like, public housing, like apartments here and there too. So we had a good mix of a little bit of everybody, right? People from all around the nations, all colors coming together. We just had a great time, man. It wasn't about color or whatever else or status. You had the poorest folks hanging with the richest folks, the whitest, the blackest, Asian, Hispanic. It didn't matter. It was always the enemy trying to separate us, right? And the media and what have you. We weren't falling for that crap because we knew what was real, what we actually experienced. So it was a good childhood. Essentially, I was blessed to have a decent childhood. I never liked school much. Like I was like, what is this? Why are we just regurgitating crap that we're not even gonna use in our lives or even remember a few weeks from now? You know what I'm saying? I knew something was off even back then, but I had decent grades. I was on the honor roll or whatever. And I had one older sister, 4 years older than me. And then my mom and dad, they were together. My mom came over from Korea when she was 18 years old, and the Korean War really messed up her family. So she grew up as an orphan, but she did know her family later on and lived with them a little bit. but she was mainly an orphan for a long time and was never that close with her fam, essentially, because of what that war did. And, we could go on a whole nother tangent about these wars, because 3 million civilians did get killed in that war. So it's not all, sunshine and rainbows and, oh, these heroes, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of BS. Who are you really fighting for? The private bankers at the end of the day? And these politicians? Who are they really fighting for? I know people have good intent, and there are some real heroes out there, but we got to be real with ourselves, because I've seen it a lot being in a military town. My great-grandpa served World War II, I believe it was. Was it World War II? And have a lot of homies that are in the service, right? That I've got much love for, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of them are high ranking at this point because we're pretty old now. So we got some connects in the military, but who are you really fighting for? We got to ask that question, family. It's quite obvious that things are corrupt. So, and then my dad, on the other hand, his family, my grandma's side grew up in Missouri. A lot of them came from Missouri, and my grandpa, Northeast Oklahoma, and he's actually part Cherokee. We used to call him the Chief. And I got a video showing about the real Israelites. Their natives are real Israelites too, as well as others. At this point, it's all colors because we're so mixed. But anyways, yeah, Cherokee, Northeast Oklahoma, they came through on the Trail of Tears, right? And we would call him the Chief because he looked like a native chief, quite honestly. But some of his brothers looked more Caucasian. And my grandma's side is like European mixed, European mutt with a bunch of German, Irish, French, Scottish, Polish, all sorts of different things, French. So, but my dad, my grandma and grandpa, they had some decent status in the town for what it's worth, right? Decent money, high positions. My grandpa was a contractor, built a lot of homes, repaired a lot of homes. Everyone in the town knew him, had love and respect for him, seemingly. And well, actually, one person did. I'll get to that later. And I actually dated that guy that his daughter I dated in high school. They actually had beef. He's like the only one I ever heard of him having beef with my grandpa. So go figure. It's funny how things work out like that. I'll touch on that in a minute. But yeah, so they had decent pull in the city, a lot of respect. My grandma's got a building named after an administrative building in the town. A couple streets are named after their last names. And, just good folks that would help people out, man, And my dad was the same way. He was he was like a class clown. He was an addict, a functioning addict a lot of his adult life because he had depression too. He was dealing with things like most people, right? But he was on a lot of drugs and on the lick. I don't know how many times I've ever seen him drink pure water. This man was always on some Crown and Coke with ice, or some other drink. But he would give his shirt off his back to anyone, and he was like the best friend to the one that didn't have any friends. I'd seen it so many times. So he was a really solid dude. So I had a decent childhood growing up. Neither of my parents were religious. So it was kind of a free-for-all, you know what I'm saying? Where basically they would go golfing. Like there was a cheap membership at a local golf course, nice little course. So they were gone a lot of the times when the weather was nice. And my sister and I, we pretty much were raised by the state and by the TV and the music, right? By these influences. But, my mom and dad did the way they could. They always provided. We had some rough times. If it wasn't for my grandparents, we probably went on the street a few times, honestly. But they worked like regular jobs, not making much money at all. You know what I'm saying? So we didn't have the best of the best, but we were kind of spoiled even though we didn't have much. I don't know how they did it, I know my pops was slinging a little bit later down the road. But anyway, so we had a nice basketball goal in the backyard. It was a, half court, but it was like a glass backboard, adjustable goal. You could put it down on 8 foot and we're just dunking on each other all the time. So the whole hood and the whole city, the whole town would come over to the backyard. So there'd be cars parked up and down all the streets. Our neighbors were like 15 feet away probably. And I feel bad, forgive us neighbors if you come across this, because, the language, people were yelling, smoking, drinking. There's a lot of girls. My Guatemalan neighbor, Jose, he was telling my grandpa he thought we were running a brothel downstairs because we would rent out the basement apartment. And there's a rap group staying down there. My sister's friend's brother, and his friend were staying down there. They're our homies too. We were hustling upstairs, slinging drugs. They were slinging downstairs. So we were all collabing. It was crazy. It's like a above the rim kind of. It was how I was growing up in high school because I was kind of kind of a local star playing basketball, starting on the team since sophomore year. I was the only kid on the team that wasn't black that year, and we had a squad. Like the team the year before when I was a freshman, they just lost in the state championship to Wayne Simeon. He was the NBA champion for Leavenworth. They had 5 D1 guys. We had a bunch of college guys. So all these guys would come over to the house and play in the backyard. So you had the hustlers, you had the poorest kids, you had the richest kids, all colors back there clowning, having a good time, playing ball, but also getting into some shenanigans as well. But my dad, he said he was trying to get the kids off the street, ultimately, right? At least he knew where we were at. We're not out in the streets running amok because there's more trouble out there, honestly. But we did get into some trouble here and there. And, like I said, we're hustling upstairs and downstairs. So it was wild. And we weren't, there wasn't no brothel running in the basement, but there was a lot of girls coming up and down. It's just wild times. But so with that said, what else? Where do we transition from there? So high school, yeah, I didn't really, I was a homecoming prince one year, but I really didn't like school. I was actually kind of depressed, even though I was kind of popular and had all the friends. Everyone would come. My spot was like, our house was the hangout spot. So I had a lot of friends, but I was still depressed. And I was tired of school. I was tired of playing ball. I was just tired of going through the motions and having to do, like having to do it. It just didn't feel like any freedom at all. I guess I had a natural rebellious spirit growing up and born into darkness. You kind of get that spirit on you, right? Like naturally born into a fallen world with a fallen nature. I'll touch more on that in a little while, but so let's see. I don't want to make this too long. So anyways, I ended up getting a scholarship to play basketball at a local college in Kansas, one of the best JUCO leagues in the nation. The team was always one of the best teams in the nation. And man, I was actually speaking of the one that my grandpa had beef with. He owned this smaller hotel, right? And he sold it to my ex-girlfriend's dad. They're from India. And he actually had a little beef with him. He said he was a crook or something like that, but I don't know the full story exactly. But I know my grandpa had some good clout in the town, so I bet he wasn't lying probably. But we bless those who curse us and what have you. But I ended up dating this guy's daughter, and she come to find out she put a curse on me. And this is at a time where I didn't grow up in a religious home. I didn't know anything about magic, black magic, curses, hexes, and all that. I would have thought, yeah, right. Like, what is that? But in retrospect, she actually did, and I found out. And this other ex I dated, she actually said that she did put some hex on me. She knew. And I was like, yeah, right, whatever, you're just being jelly or something like that was what I was thinking probably. But she was right. She was actually right. So I was carrying the weight of this curse, which made me even more depressed and had anxiety and stuff. So I couldn't really focus on hooping. I didn't want to play ball. You know what I'm saying? And not to mention, I got sick my senior year with the worst case the doctor said he's ever seen of mononucleosis. So I was battling with that. I missed half the season because my spleen was enlarged, and they said if you rupture your spleen, you could die. So I had to sit out half the season, right? And I had high expectations, somewhat, right? But so I ended up going JUCO, and the school is a good school. Actually, one of my homeboys went with me, the homie Buck, and I think they just finished second in the nation. So it was a really renowned school, and actually, I think 7 guys went D1. I was starting in the preseason tournaments, and the coach was telling my dad I was the nucleus of the team. And I was getting D1 looks. There's D1 scouts coming to these tournaments saying they're going to come back to recruit me. So I was doing decent. You know what I mean? I could easily went D1. Like I said, 7 of our guys went D1 to big schools, and a lot of them actually did really good at the schools. They were starting. They're some of the best players on their teams when they transferred to these D1 schools, and played in the NCAA tournament. Were crushing at some of these schools, and I was starting, so I was gonna go D1, but I couldn't focus. I had this curse on me. I wasn't feeling playing ball at all. I was trying to get back to this girl like the OG simp. You know what I'm saying? Like I just wasn't having it. I just couldn't hoop, man. I was so down and out and depressed when I shouldn't have been. The homies were there supporting me and everything. The coaches it's one of the best coaches, Hall of Famer coach. He could easily be D1 coach, but I think he denied offers. He chose to stay in that town. But yeah, man. So I tricked it off, right? And I was on drugs, I was smoking weed every day pretty much and trying other things as well, drinking a lot, just trying to get, trying to escape these problems and, just the problems of the world and just all the depression and anxiety that I had, and plus this curse and autism, ADD, ADHD, all that stuff, right? So I was going through a lot, like we all are. You know what I'm saying? This is a common story to man. You know what I'm saying? And I began researching things, what's going on in the world. Like, bro, why are they lying to us about everything? Because 9/11, ever since then, I was like, whoa, what happened to Building 7, right? That also went down, right? That didn't get hit by a plane. And there's so many holes in the story, so many lies, and all these dots that connect. It's pretty easy to connect, right? You can see that someone's lying. It's pretty obvious, right? I don't even see how they're getting away with all these lies still. So that opened my eyes to what's going on in the world, and I would go down all these conspiracy rabbit holes, and sure enough, a lot of these were like facts. It wasn't just theories. There was a lot of conspiracy facts. And yeah, that rabbit hole goes deep, but a lot of that information has been released. People kind of know at this point that we're being played at this point. But back then, people were like, oh, we're living the American dream still. You know what I'm saying? And now reality happens, and look where we're at as a society now. It's quite a bit different. But since '01, since 9/11, it really changed, and that's when you can say that it really started going downhill. The enemy and his plans, they really start getting bold with what they're doing. And I'll touch on that a little bit more here in a second. But yeah, so I couldn't focus on hooping. I quit school. I dropped out a semester. I ended up going to like KU, which was always like my dream school, and some other places I ended up going. But yeah, at KU, it was wild in 2008. That's when they won the national championship and the Orange Bowl, when the football team was actually decent. So we had a blast, like it was wild. We had a rental house, and I was dating some of the finest girls on campus, and I wasn't even playing ball, so it wasn't from star status. You know what I'm saying? I guess you could say. I don't know what maybe they are blind, Mr. Magoo's granddaughters. I don't know. But yeah, we used to hoop at the rec, and we'd play the KU players, right? Football and basketball. I actually used to play with Aqib Talib. He won a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos cornerback. We used to play with him and like his Texas homeboys. And then we used to also play the guys on KU. And they had a squad, right? They won championship that year. And we used to cook them. Me and the homeboy in particular, GC. We used to hoop. And they would call me the challenger because I was getting buckets. I would cook them. And, I know they weren't playing their hardest because it's pickup ball. You're trying to get hurt and stuff like that. But at the same time, nobody wants to get cooked by Ching Chong Chang either. You know what I'm saying? So they're putting out a little bit of effort, probably a little bit, right? But anyways, what's wild about this is my homeboy GC, I guess he took one of their girls at the club or something like that one night. So he scrapped one of the biggest guys on the team. Like he's like linebacker size, 6'5", 6'6", and swole. My homeboy GC's like my size, 6'1", 185, wiry, right? He might be like 6'2", little. He had a long wingspan though, and he ended up whooping that dude at the club. So we were whooping them on and off the court, taking their girls. It was wild times, I'm telling you. But we squashed the beef with them, and ended up being homies and stuff. So it was all love at the end of the day. And they were from Cali. A lot of their guys were Cali guys. So, there's a Cali, Bay, Kansas City connection in the hustle game and music game and all that too. So it was all love at the end of the day, but it was wild times. Let's just put it like that, family. So, where do we segue from here? Oh yeah, I ended up finishing college, not at KU, but at Fort Hays State. I ended up with a bachelor's and a master's degree, two degrees that I haven't really used much at this point today, I'll be honest. So, yeah, I don't know if I would recommend people going to school. What I would recommend, though, I'll get to you what I would recommend kids doing, and adults as well in general. I'll tell you here in a bit. So I don't want to spoil the testimony. So after that, I end up getting back up with the ex from high school, not the one that put the curse on me, but this other one that knew. And I came out to Colorado because I was into cannabis so much. This was like around 2010. I think I came out here in '09 to Colorado, and because cannabis was going legal, and we were trying to do it legally. We were always in the streets doing it illegally, so we're trying to do it legally for once. So I had like the medical card and all of that. I had some homeboys out here. We were getting it in, growing some heat. You know what I mean? Doing our thing, right? But there's always something that would happen because we actually were sharing a kitchen. We were out trying to do it legal, right? We were making extracts, and sharing a kitchen with Chiba Chews, which is like one of the biggest companies. We're coming out the gates crushing the game. We really were killing. And it was a lot of my ideas and what have you. But the homeboy, man, we only had a verbal agreement. Always get it on paper. You know what I'm saying? Always get it on paper. Don't trust anybody. Of course, he stabs me in the back after I put him on and let him stay at my place. He came out from Kansas, helped him out big time. He used a bunch of my ideas. We had products of the month in magazines from my ideas and what have you. And of course, he ends up backstabbing me. And I was like, if I just chucked the deuce. If that's the route you want to go, you lost a homie. I'm more about loyalty than money. But I think to this point, he's probably a millionaire at this point doing his thing, and I got no beef. I wish him the best, but I will tell the true story. You know what I'm saying? But what's wild is I think something really bad happened to him, and you reap what you sow. But we don't wish that on nobody. But so we put that water in the bridge. I just kept it moving. I was getting into different opportunities, different cannabis opportunities, still trying to do our thing. And it was like a roller coaster. There's always something good. Oh, about to get it in. And then something would always happen, betrayal, something with the laws or something like that, right? And this is also at a time where we were being watched by feds. Detectives were knocking at the door. Drones that looked like birds were flying above our heads, circling forever. Helicopters, all kinds of stuff. And I had homeboys get popped, homeboys get locked up, and homeboys die. Homeboys that were gang banging. Homeboys that got locked up from a long time that just got out recently too as well. Some that are still locked from like 20 years ago, like crazy charges, crazy bids. So we were in it pretty deep. A lot of my homeboys were Bloods actually. I never got into the Blood gang, but I was kind of a leader of a clique called the Chinks. We were all half breed Koreans, and some of them end up being killers too, and all slinging dope, and all had big potential. Some actually did pretty good, and some I haven't caught up with in a long time. I still got love for them, but obviously I wasn't that good of an influence back then at all into that stuff, right? But you live and you learn. But I was lucky enough, fortunate enough, blessed enough to get out of this stuff and was trying to do it legal. But I got out of the game and was trying to follow God, whoever it was. I didn't know at the time. Like I said, I wasn't born into any religious home. So I was like, I know someone's been looking after me. Someone's got my six, fam, right? Someone's always been looking after me because I've got out of some of the stickiest situations ever. I mean, this testimony could go down so many rabbit holes, but I don't want to talk your ear off, family. But there's so many crazy stories, honestly. But I was lucky enough to get out. I was tired of it, like I was tired of it, like the roller coaster, just chasing my tail like a dog, family, going in circles. I was getting sick of it and heartache of seeing all the homeboys get popped or killed or whatever else. You know what I'm saying? And just all the greed involved, it just wasn't good. You know what I'm saying? We watch too many movies. We grew up on too much BS, right? A lot of rap and hip hop, hustle culture, hustle gang, hustle game. And it doesn't end up well. A lot of times it does not end up well. It's not the way to go. It's not the way to live this life. Life's too short. I mean, you just never know when you're going to check out. And what's on the line, come to find out, is heaven or hell. And I didn't know this at the time, family. I really didn't. So I was, luckily, God saved me out of this stuff because I was playing Russian roulette with my soul, family. So, man, I'm just so grateful for him to get me out of it and deliver me from all these things, all this depression, anxiety, drugs, alcohol, all the lewd sex or whatever else, right? Because that's all I knew. That's kind of all I knew was basketball and hustling, essentially, right? And I wasn't the type to try to backstab or what I mean. I wanted to see everybody eat, all the homies eat, and had plans to do like self-sufficient communities when we came up, and like had decent intent. You know what I'm saying? But in a fallen nature, we all have wicked hearts, wicked intent, whether we realize it or not. We're blinded. We really are blinded from the enemy. So next thing you know, I go on a search for God. Who is this that has my back, that looks after me when I'm on my last dollar a million times? I'll always need like something at the last second, because we had times where we were balling out, we had times where we weren't. So who's this the one that was looking after me even when I wasn't balling out and it was on my last dollar, last dime? I don't know how many times, hundreds of times. Always someone would come through miraculously or some situation. I was like, all right, good looking out. Someone's looking after me. It's some force, the universe, source, God. Somebody's looking after me. I don't know who you are, but good looking out, and I'm seeking you. I want to know who you are. Who's this God that's looking after me, or source? So I start testing out all the religions and reading extensively, studying them. I had a lot of time because I was just hustling most of the time. So I had a lot of time to read, to pray, to meditate, all that stuff, right? So I end up, let me not get ahead of myself. So when was it? 2012, right? The Mayan calendar, people talking about the end of the world. That's when I started having prophetic dreams. And what's crazy about this is back in high school, my senior year, when I got sick with mono, I was at home bedridden for, with the most pain. Like I couldn't even swallow. It was so painful every time I tried to swallow. But I was watching one show, the show I never seen before. It was on, I believe, USA or something like that channel. It was called The Dead Zone with Michael Anthony Hall. And y'all probably seen this guy. You know who this actor is, right? He was the one that always played the nerd in all the 80s movies, like The Breakfast Club and Weird Science, 16 Candles, the OG. He was always in all those movies and all these, who was the producer? John Hughes Films. But as the grown actor, he was like a stud. He looked totally different, was a beast, boss hoss, and he was the head of the show. And in this show, he something happened, like he had a near-death experience or something, right? And ever since then, he would have these powers where he could see into the future. He'd have like these visions and dreams, prophetic dreams, so he could see in the future, right? And little did I know at the time, I would have that same gift in the future. Not at the time, I didn't even know. But as the one show I was watching, like 6 seasons or something, the only show I was watching, Marathon was on. And I was like, wow, this show's interesting, man, because he was helping save people's lives. He was saying, don't do this. I seen a vision. If you go here, you're going to die. Or you know what I'm saying? Like, don't get on this train or this bus or go here. Or he knew where people were at and he'd rescue them. So he had like a gift of prophecy, but that's not how they painted it in the show. But little did I know that show, God was showing me the whole time, was my calling later on in life that I would find out in 2012, 9 years later. So I started having prophetic dreams in 2012. So there's a shift in the spiritual. I think what the Mayan calendar actually was, why it ended. It was like at the beginning of the new age or whatever else, right? Something shifted. So I'd have these prophetic dreams. I saw my great grandma dying or something like that in a dream. And then my grandpa, and then it really happened in real life weeks after. So I see my grandma pass first. It happened weeks after. See my grandpa pass. It happened a few weeks after. And then my dad, not too long after them, he passed early from a brain aneurysm, and we lost him early, and that was really hard to deal with. And I seen him passing away a few weeks before it happened. And what's crazy, he came out to Colorado the last time I seen him, and he hugged me for the longest he's ever hugged me for ever. And it was like it's seemingly random, but it's like God through him knew or something like that. And he hugged me the longest time ever before he passed. And that was a hard one to lose, you know? But we kind of expected him to pass early because he was always on doing the most, on a lot of drugs and drank. But so that really hit me hard. And this was at a time where I was looking for God and like who's giving me these dreams, and was with my ex out in the middle of nowhere. So we went to this town called Crestone, Colorado. Went from the Denver area. I was there, around this area for from 09 to 12, like 3 years. And then I was having visions to go out to this small town, 3.5 hours away from Denver. I believe it was from God showing me to go out there. Maybe I was tricked. But it's a small hippie town, one of the most beautiful places maybe on earth. Just gorgeous 14,000 foot peaks everywhere, awesome creeks running and flowing, pines, pinon trees everywhere, just amazing. The most beautiful sunsets and sunrises I've ever seen in my life. You can see all the Milky Way every night. A huge valley that goes all the way down to Roswell, New Mexico. Huge valley. And so it's an amazing place. And check this out. This is where this guy named Maurice Strong, a big wig from Canada that has UN ties and all these big energy oil ties and big energy ties. He started a foundation, him and his wife, called the Manitou Foundation, and they would give money and land grants to every tradition around the world: Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, everything you can think of, Native American spirituality. So they'd get these free land grants. So out here in the middle of nowhere, this hippie town of about 1,000 people was all these world-renowned traditions of all the major religions, basically, in this little town. So there's at a time where I'm looking for God, and it's like, what a better place. So I began dibbling and dabbling in all the religions, researching everything. And one day when I was researching, it's called the Seventh Generation Prophecy from Crazy Horse. He's from the Lakota tribe, Native American tribe, one of the biggest tribes, right? They gave the feds, the government, the U.S. government, the most hell. The Lakota tribe was one of the tribes they couldn't defeat, essentially. But Crazy Horse, who was probably a prophet, he was talking to Chief Sitting Bull, and this was a few days before the Battle of Little Bighorn, before he died. He said he had a vision. He said, I see a time of 7 generations where there's going to be great turmoil on the earth, but afterwards, all nations, all colors, all tribes are going to be gathered around the sacred tree of life in harmony, basically, peace and harmony. It's something like that. And sure enough, we're in the 7th generation that he prophesied about right now. It's 25-year generations, and it's from 2017 to 2042. And the sacred tree of life is also in the Bible that he mentioned, the tree of life. So I was like, wow, this is interesting. You know what I mean? Like, wow, this is pretty cool, because I think God really did guide me to this stuff. And the Rainbow Warriors prophecy is another Native American prophecy, kind of like similar stuff, right? The Rainbow Warriors, who I believe is the 144,000, honestly, all colors, that's why it's rainbow. They're going to sweep the earth and heal the earth after this great calamity as well. And this is like a bunch of different tribes, not just the Lakota tribe who was prophesied about the Rainbow Warriors. And I actually got a confirmation from the Lord about that. I released a word about the Rainbow Warriors being 144,000. A rainbow came out that same day after I shot the video. Confirmation. Check out this confirmation about the 7th generation prophecy. So this was in 2015 out in Crestone, middle of nowhere. After I researched these prophecies about Chief Crazy Horse, guess who shows up in the middle of nowhere at my front doorstep unannounced? Chief Crazy Horse's great-great-grandsons pop up on my porch in the middle of nowhere, 3.5 hours from Denver, tiny town. And Lakota's tribe is like North Dakota, right? And I think into South Dakota, and they got like ties to Nebraska as well. So they came out from there. You know what I'm saying? They came with a homeboy that I knew, this this OG legend from Gary, Indiana, from the hood, Kofi Alexander Washington. Kofi, he was an Olympian, track star, and he ended up out in this small town too. And he had a reggae band called Ja Kings. Ja Kings. All this ties together. So Kofi and I, we never talked about Crazy Horse or his great grandsons ever. So they just popped up right after I was done reading this prophecy, pretty much like really soon after, out of nowhere. And he didn't